Greetings, dear unknown friends. Today we are presenting an Akashic reading by the psychic and channeler Aron Abrahamsen, performed in 1982 for a hermetic magician, Orthodox bishop, and author Richard Porter Adair. The recording has been provided by the stepsons of Richard Adair. We are presenting this now because soon we will release a book written by Richard Porter Adair entitled The Philosophers of the Living Fire, The Dance of Life, a first for Living Fire Publishing, which recounts his own life after entering into the occult path and meeting a remarkable teacher named Mar Sheeman in 1950s New York City. Autobiographical, but written as a novel. A topic we will be covering in depth as the fall approaches is the concept of sacred or divine magic, as opposed to personal magic, arbitrary magic, and sorcery as it was given by Valentin Tomberg in his masterpiece, Meditations on the Tarot, A Journey into Christian Hermeticism, a book which is extremely difficult to summarize in a few sentences. But if I were to attempt to, I would say Meditations provides a kind of philosophical outlook that is based on the concept of sacred magic as a means of coming into alignment with divine will and the spiritual process and purposes of evolution, as opposed to the ego attempting through knowledge and understanding of occult science to control nature and life circumstances. The book, written by Richard Porter Adair in the 1980s, but not yet published, is a practical and mostly autobiographical example of common difficulties of the occult path and a direct karmic encounter with the problem of arbitrary magic versus sacred or divine magic. Psychic warfare, both between individuals and use of the same by the powers that be, is a central theme in his book, which is otherwise a sort of cozy historical fiction. But I digress, and we will cover Richard's book more in depth later. This reading, given in 1982, provides some powerful truths in regard to this problem, and we see a lot in this reading that is of universal value, with the many challenges we all face today, physically and spiritually. Please enjoy this experience.
November 14th, 1982. This reading is for Richard P. Adair. All right.
Everything in the world has its point of balance. All things should be in balance, and all things are meant to be in that state. But when there are overreactions and a sheer neglect of the law of God, the law of the universe, then there will be these imbalances which will cause a great upset in the entire nature of the universe, the planet Earth, and the lives of each individual. For in order to maintain that balance, one also must have a little insight. But having insight and not doing anything with it is very useless. For unless one does something with the insight one has, it is better that one would not even know about the insight or even be blessed with that insight or foresight. For it is so true that people in your time have been very proud of technology, and yet intuition has been around for so much a longer time, and technology has only again come to the surface. But in order that there be a balance in all things, so must technology be developed through intuition, and yet the balance must also exist in relationships. It must exist within each individual so that the person may be able to not only cope with particular situations and conditions, but be able also to overcome particular obstacles and difficulties. For as there must be a balance within the universe and within all nature, so must there also be a balance between problems and solutions. For wherever there is a problem, there is a solution. Otherwise, if there were no solution, there would be no problem. Or if there were, of course, no problem, there is no solution needed. So in the case of many an individual, one first ought to look at the very situation without becoming panicky, without becoming overexcited, and without becoming too anxious. For when one does that, or when one comes into that type of a state, one will also lose complete sight of all things and even forget in what direction the solution lies, and even more, will forget what the solution is. For one also needs to understand that as one looks at the situation, if one would investigate a little further, one will find the solution within the very problem where one also is. For as one can also begin to recognize a problem, a situation, a condition as being detrimental to one's own safety and to one's own physical, mental, and spiritual health, one ought to immediately begin to assess the situation and not to allow the situation to grow any stronger, and not to allow particular events to come into one's life so that these events can do harm. For one is always surrounded by many activities. Often these activities are negative, and one therefore has a duty and the responsibility to self to protect self. Now, the best protection one can ever hope to have is now the light of the Christ, the cross of the Christ, and the blood of the Christ. We would strongly suggest that you, that is this individual to whom we are presently speaking, investigate both the tradition and the faith of the Catholic Church in your area, just to obtain some of the principles in regards to the meaning and faith of the blood of Christ, that you may be able to understand it just a little, and by faith will be able to use it as a tool in order to protect yourself against the negativity and the difficulties which have come upon you and will continue to do so. The attitude that you also utilize in investigating these ideas and concepts are very important. For if you ever have prejudice, and if you ever have bigotry, that in your heart, that in itself will not carry you very far. But you must promise yourself to be open, for when you need help, and help you need, you cannot afford to already have your mind made up from which direction your help is going to come and in what form. You must be willing to go to the source where the help is, and God is the source, but God uses also the human instrument in order to provide that source of help, you see. And it also would be well if you would read the book of Hebrews from your own scriptures in regards to the blood of Christ, for that will shed another light upon your own search for help and for additional insight into what also would be of great benefit for you at this time. You need to understand that the help which is to come to you is not what you already think what it is. It is something entirely different. So therefore we have suggested that you look into the power and the authority of the blood of Christ and use that against any adversary which will come against you. For example, when you feel that there are difficulties coming your way and that there are others who are sending you some very negative activities and negative vibrations. So you may say these words, I bring the blood of Christ against these negative vibrations to protect me and to nullify their activity. And I bring the cross of Christ against these vibrations in order that I may have life and that those who are sending these to me may also find a new life. You may use these words or shorten them or change them in accordance with your own faith and what you believe would be the best method in how to approach this. We find that your life seal consists of 4 pairs of wings. These 4 pairs are they are placed in 4 positions on a circle. First, we shall draw a circle whose color is a rose pink. On that circle, on top and below and to the right and to the left, there is 1 pair of wing. Is this clear?
Yes.
Now the top pair is the wing of healing. The bottom pair is the wing of foundation, or the wings of foundation. The right pair is the wings of hope, and the left pair is the wing for growth. In the center of this circle, there is a gemstone, and this gemstone is that of a ruby, a many-faceted ruby, and if this type of a ruby would be worn on his right hand in a ring made from gold, there also would be the energy from that ruby which would help maintain a stability and a balance within his physical body, for that ruby will remind him of the many facets within this individual. Some facets can be very clearly defined, others are still very dubious, or they are not as clearly seen. In short, this ruby is also a picture of his many personalities, but it will remind this individual the importance in keeping all of the personalities and the character traits in the proper balance for this particular time. Now, directly above this circle, which also consists of the 4 pairs of wings, we find an inscription, and this inscription is reading as follows: "Come to life and find meaning. Come to life and find meaning." Directly below this circle, there is one book with the title of Awareness and Growth. This book is wide open, and on the right side there is that inscription, or the words awareness and growth, right on the top of the right page. On the left page there is the picture of an old-fashioned plow, indicating that the mind needs to be cultivated in order that new growth may come to this very individual. Surrounding this entire life seal, there is a square in the color of a bright orange, and the background color for this entire life seal is an emerald green. And we shall go on.
Would you give a brief summary of the influences which have been affecting Richard in this life?
There have been many a difficulty, even as he has indicated, in this as well as in past life experiences. For he has been a priest in one lifetime where he dealt with many elements, both good and some not so good. For he at one time was not particular in discerning what would help or what would bring him into a higher position of authority. So he has been greatly influenced by Mercury, which has almost settled his mind, so that often in this as well as in past life experiences has determined beforehand how the situation would develop and what conditions would come about and how the help would also arrive. Mercury, though, has made him into quite an analytical thinker, though he is also a very strong individual. He can easily be led by those whom he thinks have a higher authority and those people whom he feels has some type of a mystical power over him. This is because he is still a very curious soul and still desires to investigate in order to learn and grow. But he can also be caught in the trap of intrigue, for he has come across many a teaching which he finds very intriguing, and often so has he stayed there and has been dwelling upon it and not moving any further. But now the time has come for him to set aside many of the trappings that he has held on to, so that he may move on and carry very little baggage, carry very little superfluous, that is, superfluous ideas and concepts, so that he may be free to accept what comes from God. But what will be important for him in this very instance has also come from Neptune, and that is not only intuition, but discernment. For now he needs to discern what is right and what is not right. He needs also to discern in what direction he is going, and Neptune has now come very strongly into his life to make him re-evaluate his own position and condition. And finally, from Venus with Jupiter, these two, so has there been a creative element of delight growing within him, an element which also would make him quite an artist, but at the same time he has the talent in being in lithography, such a talent which he also was expressing in Atlantis. And from Neptune, so from Jupiter rather, Venus with Jupiter, so do we find that Jupiter will help to bring you into the situation where you will be meeting your future head on, and there will be no way that you will be escaping it. For you have been surrounded with ideas and concepts and situations and conditions, and often so have you been at your wit's end.
We hope you found this reading helpful and enlightening. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so, and leave a comment with any questions you might have regarding this episode. Thank you and namaste, the Philosophers of the Living Fire.